terrific stuff, I must say, in all those presentations. It's lovely to learn new things, in conferences like this. But can I just start with the business of growth and throw it to you, Mark? Can we continue to grow at this rate already? Eoghan talked about the difficulty in getting staff, and this is a labour-intensive industry. It's one of the really good things about it. So how are we going to manage to grow? How do we handle it? Do we have to put a cap on it? What about the fact that youngsters aren't coming into it? It's a fabulous industry to work in, given the right conditions and the right career path. So how do we manage?
I think we have to invest, because if we want to, we have pinch points. There are major attractions in major urban areas, as has been said, that are full. And sure, we can add some more capacity to them, and so we should. But if we propose to achieve this ambition of changing the map, we've got to invest, right, in new reasons to visit. I mean, that's what the UNW2 are saying. You've got to invest in increasing the attractiveness of new areas if you want people to go there. So clearly it's going to need investment in terms of reasons to visit other parts of the country, and of course that implies accommodation stock and all that comes with that. So I do think we have the landmass to help continued growth. The pattern of tourism probably will need to look different. You're talking about skills as well. I mean, I think, yes, overall, we're not talking about growth that is going to challenge it. But of course, if I go back to the point that replacement ratios, birth rates are not high enough in general in Europe to replace the economies, to keep the population up. The only way these economies can grow is through immigration. That's the only way these economies can grow into the future, and that's going to be as true of our industry and Ireland as it is anywhere else in Europe.
You mean that increasingly the people who will be manning, womaning our hotels, our tourist attractions will not be Irish?
Exactly. Yes.
Good or bad?
No, not good. Essential. If we expect to grow as an industry, we're not producing enough kids. We need to have more. We need at least 2.1 each to keep the population up.
Right. I take it that's not your mission to suggest
I'm free.
Well, there you go. It's all your fault. Eoghan, just to pick up with you, the issue of getting people into the industry, the fact that you represent organisations that say they have problems getting staff, and yet we have this forecast of massive growth. How are we going to handle it?
It's a tough one. Does it sound okay this time? No.
Keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking. It's a tough one. It's probably the biggest, I don't know, there's a single mic. It's probably the biggest challenge we have as a sector. Like, where are those 80,000 employees going to come from over the next 8 years? And Mark's right to a certain extent. A lot of them won't be Irish. And we are, as a country, close to full employment. What are we, 94% or 95%? So there'll be a lot of EU workers, I think, migrating to Ireland to work in the tourism and hospitality business. And I do think there's an element of, a sort of a discrepancy to a certain extent that tourism employment is growing. And tourism employment is growing into Ireland quite significantly year on year. So, it is a popular sector for people looking for a job and stuff. Some of it may be transient employment, but we've all been there. We've all worked part-time or over a summer period in a sort of a hospitality business. But it's a huge challenge. I think we have to, as a industry, we have to promote ourselves better. And we probably have to do better talent retention. But also we will need to recruit from overseas. And one of the slight positives of a Brexit is there's an awful lot of EU workers in the tourism and hospitality industry in Britain who are now feeling less secure about their future. And if they want a similar English-speaking working experience, then Ireland is on their doorstep. So maybe one of the brighter aspects of Brexit.
Yes, they'll still have all the protection of being EU citizens here.
Exactly. But there is an onus, I think, on us as an industry and us as a sector, making sure that we promote ourselves as a really good, exciting, enriching career opportunity.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've done that as well as we should.
No, and some of that goes back, to things like regionality and seasonality, Paul, the two issues that you brought up. But can I just sort of paint a picture that the paddy wagons coming down from Dublin to the Cliffs of Moher for the day, And I know that sort of day trip suits people. I've had American in-laws only this last year, and they did that Cliffs of Moher run. Off early in the morning, boom, boom, see the Cliffs of Moher, have lunch, head back. And to the people of that region, you know, not an awful lot of benefit. Now, how do you change that model? Because that increasingly is starting to sort of take shape. And what are the carrots and the sticks that you can use to make sure that people will stay longer? Is it, for instance, some sort of a ban on the number of these one-day trips that are allowed into an attraction like the Cliffs of Moher?
I think just to, I suppose, kind of to pick up on a couple of points, if I can, very briefly. First of all, on the skills shortage and the labour force, I'll come to that in a second. You know, in terms of, you know, completely agree, absolutely, we're going to need to, you know, that supply of labour is going to be a core issue for us and one we want to work on. But I think long term, what we've also got to bear in mind is what's artificial intelligence going to do? What's technology going to do in terms of the amount of jobs that people are working in today, not just in tourism but across the economy, the amount of jobs that people are spending their time working in today that won't exist in the future because technology is going to move on and artificial intelligence is going to take over, and that's going to create extra space. That's going to create, extra productivity. So I think we just need to keep that in mind as well in terms of that. With regards to that,
well, you're talking about one of those awful ibis hotels where you check in, where everything is, you know, machine run, where you never get to talk to anybody, where you never get to greet anybody or have any sort of interchange. I mean, if this is the happiness business, as Mark says, surely people are central to it, and that won't change.
No, that won't change. You know, in terms of there will be, you know, people will always be really important and a really important part of it, for sure. But I mean, in terms of there are lots of people who like the Citizen M's, who like the ibises, that works for them in terms of what they do. And there's also an awful lot of hotel rooms that are and tourism infrastructure that's taken up by people who are not tourists. They're here on corporate business. They're here on meetings. They're in and out fast and stuff. And they're not necessarily looking for that. They're looking for the fastest, most efficient. They're not in that holidaymaker mode. They're in I'm in and out. I'm here for a meeting. So how do we make sure and liberate that? But I'm not just talking about artificial intelligence and technology in the tourism industry. I'm talking about artificial intelligence and technology that in other industries that's going to liberate people to work in more people industries like the tourist industry. So I just think, you know, in terms of, but I completely agree with Mark in terms of we are going to need, it's clear when you look at those demographics, we are going to need increased immigration. We are going to need that to staff the tourism industry. With regards to the destination management stuff, I think one of the benefits that Ireland has, I think if we all look at our own holidays, there's lots of times where I would imagine everyone in this room has been on holiday and they've got up and they've got on a bus early in the morning, they've gone to see a site, and they've hopped on the bus after taking a photograph, they've hopped on the bus after a half an hour and now gone to another site and gone on. And people want to do that on holidays. And we need to not talk about that as a negative. That's a good thing. The fact that Ireland is small, you can get around it quickly. If you're coming over here from North America and you're in the US market, you get 10 or 11 holidays a year to spend. You want to be able to hit the highlights. And that's a good thing that Ireland has, that you can get around the country relatively quickly, and therefore we need to meet that visitor need, and we need to meet it better, a lot better than we currently meet.
What if by doing it you are turning off the local community? I know it's an absolutely central thing, buy-in by the local community.
Yeah.
And down around the Cliffs of Moher, for instance, you're actually at a very dangerous point where local people are saying, this is not bringing us any real financial advantage, but it's disrupting our lives.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it is bringing, people are not seeing the financial advantage. We have been in an instance where I remember talking to a guy who worked in a petrol station down in Liscannor, and chatting to him about tourism. I don't really know anything about tourism. I don't work in the tourism industry. And 9 out of the last 10 cars he put petrol in were tourists and hire cars. there is, people are not fully, and this is a job that the tourism industry need to do and we need to support on, to make sure people are really aware of the benefits that tourism is bringing, even though they don't necessarily see it as that. Also, every household in the country, the amount of tax that every household in the country is paying is €1,000 a year less than it would be because of the amount of tax that's been paid by tourists on our behalf. And it's been invested back into services like health and housing and police, etc., etc. So we are all benefiting from tourism, and the fact that somebody can get from Dublin to the Cliffs of Moher in one day is helping growing that number. Now, having said that, having said that, it is a good thing, and we need to meet that need. We also need to work a lot more and do a lot more to make people stay longer and spend more time in the area.
How?
In years. And that's through, for example, our visitor experience development plans, where we're working on effectively building out clusters of activities that will make people say, well, there will always be people who say, I want to go to the Cliffs of Moher, and the next day I want to be in the Giant's Causeway. You know, there will be, and we need to meet that need, but also we need to meet the growing need, and there is a growing need for people who want a slower holiday, who want a more authentic experience. And we need to say, okay, well, look, there is a great experience to go down and spend 2 or 3 days in Clare and go to the Cliffs of Moher, and the next day take a spin out to the Aran Islands, and the next day go see the Burren and go to the Doon Cliffs, and to build out those experiences and get cross-selling going on. And we're working with our colleagues in tourism and getting tour operators to program like that. We need to make sure we've got the right accommodation base in those areas. So, for example, on a really good example is on not too far up the road here on Skelligs. We've worked and we're encouraging, you know, things like, say, to the guys who are in boats who are bringing people out to the island. So look, if you go earlier in the morning with your boat and leave earlier, you kind of force people to stay nearer the area and do bed and boat as opposed to just boat. So don't just offer somebody a place on one of those precious boat trips out to Skellig Island. You know, have more of them have to buy a bed and boat package, so they have to stay in the area the night before if they want the privilege of getting on one of those really special trips out at Skellig.
But that's up to each individual operator, is it?
It's up to the operators, and it's up to the communities working together in order to do that.
And how do you give them an incentive to do that?
Well, it is just by putting together, helping them to see that, you know, in terms of the guy who's running the boat, if the hotel business grows, there's more of a chance that his son or daughter will be able to have an employment opportunity in that area, working in that hotel.
Oh, is enough being done, I mean, in terms of that sort of plan that Paul's talking about?
I think the day visitor, if you like, is to a certain extent the least valuable tourist visitor to the country, because what we all want is dwell time, and we all want them to stay the 2 or 3 days in a particular region and spend money in a hotel or a B&B or a restaurant or a pub and enjoy the Irish music. That's what we want, and a lot of that comes down to product and you know, creating things to see and do, and things of scale and things of international appeal. And I don't think we do that well enough as a country. So one of the enabling factors that I had up on the slide was the money invested, if you like, in new product development. It's not enough. So we, as a sector that employs 230,000 people or 240,000 people, don't have enough money committed by the state into new product development. And there's things that could be done, and Paul's doing quite a bit with relatively finite budgets, but there's more that could be done. Things like a coast-to-coast greenway, things like a dark skies observatory on the west coast, things like something to counterbalance the Cliffs of Moher. So the Cliffs of Moher isn't the only Cliffs experience. We were talking about it last night.
Yes.
And Slieve Lee is a comparable.
County Wexford has the most fantastic cliffs around
but there's not the interpretation, there's not the parking facilities, there's not the access, there's possibly not the promotion, although tourism are moving away to a certain extent from the iconic sites. So more needs to be done, I think, to dial up and invest in some of our natural assets, because they're there. But you know, if we sort of get complacent and go, great numbers, let's not worry about it. The Cliffs of Moher will, I wish we're constantly talking about it, I don't know whether anybody from the Cliffs of Moher is in the room, but the Cliffs of Moher will become a less attractive experience. And the matching expectations or exceeding expectations data that I had up on the slide will erode.
Yeah,
and that
it
becomes
is.
a self-fulfilling
It is
problem.
becoming our Barcelona. The Cliffs of Moher.
Can I just give you a little bit of international, I suppose,
And I'll come to Mark in a minute.
benchmarking of that. I was recently over at the IMEX conference in Vegas, where fantastic business has been done for next year, and a lot of industry from here where we're involved in that. But Las Vegas is a really interesting case. They've got a domestic population of 2 million people. They are effectively an island in desert, as opposed to an island surrounded by sea. Now, it's a very different kind of tourism offering they have, but they've got a population of 2 million people and 47 million visitors a year. 47 million. We're between 9 and 10 here in Ireland off a population of 4 to 5 million. So in terms of, and there's no talk of over-tourism, there's absolutely no talk, because they have the infrastructure and the mechanisms to manage that. And in terms of, and that's what, obviously our tourism offering is very different, but we have, so Eoghan is absolutely right. What we need to do, and Mark's presentation clearly painted the case for what we need to do, is to build out the infrastructure and the mechanism to host that tourism growth that's out there, so that Ireland can get more than its fair share of that growth, and that whole economy is fueled off that.
Mark, in terms then, because my soul always shrivels, when I hear people talking about development. And one of the wonderful things about this country is the natural beauty that is there. And I always have a bit of a suspicion of yet another interpretative centre. But what is it then that we need to build? I mean, we are so lucky. If anybody who was in Kerry this summer would never, ever, ever want to be anywhere else again except in Kerry this summer. It was epic. And that's the only word I can think of for stunning. Now, how many interpretative centres, bits of building do we need to do? And what's the argument for letting it natural, leaving it natural and let people see it that way?
You have to make it accessible, right? It has to be accessible. So the interpretation can, of course, increasingly be in less invasive ways. You can use technology and so on to it doesn't have to be a big visitor centre necessarily these days, although animation, important engagement with people is an important part of that, perhaps as well. So, but I think it's a nearly, you're asking me how long is a piece of string there, to some extent.
Yeah.
Because we haven't yet said there's any desired limit to our tourism growth. So in that sense, we need to, if we know we have bottlenecks, we need to keep investing. I mean, the greenways, where we've built them, have been a fantastic success. It's a wonderful plan here in Kerry. There's many opportunities to be building greenways all around the country, and ultimately the network that will offer us fantastic opportunities for the foreseeable future. I think to the point, Steve League, for example, are opening up their visitor centre next summer. So with parking facilities and making the experience better, because if you've ever been to it, everyone's driving up to the top of the car park, there's no parking on the edge, it's actually a mess. Whereas now there's going to be a visitor centre at the bottom and a shuttle bus up and interpretation, and it's going to be a better experience,
And certainly Newgrange and the access to Newgrange, I was initially suspicious of it. In fact, it's great because it keeps the numbers under control.
Yeah.
Now, can we ask the audience, because we've had an awful lot of interesting points made by the panel this morning, is there anybody who'd like to ask a question while we still have time? Yeah, yourself. Will you just wait until we get you a microphone? Woman here in row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Thank you. I suppose, first of all, I think all the presentations were very interesting this morning. And I suppose my question relates to the National Tourism Day that Eoghan referred to. I'm from the other group, been with the company for 30 years, seen a lot. I suppose we haven't had a tourism day like that. If I could ask the panel, or the rest of the panel, are they equally supportive of such a concept, be it a tourism day, tourism week, to profile the industry and perhaps address some of the future issues that will come on? And also, if they are supportive and if everyone thinks it's a good idea, how do we go about the next steps?
Okay, Mark, Tourism Day?
Yes, we're supportive of it. Absolutely. Of course, most of our staff are overseas, so I think it's more a question really for Paul and the industry than how it's brought to life.
Paul?
Yeah, we're supportive of. We completely buy that tourism punches way below its weight in terms of the impact that it should have, the impact that it has in terms of the voice it has relative to the economic contribution it makes. So any initiatives like that that will help kind of drive that we were very supportive of.
Okay, anybody else with a question?
I think just in terms of the next steps, I think we probably, agencies and industry and the department probably need to get together and form some sort of a steering group or work group and start putting the flesh on the bones, because it's a concept at the moment. But there is stuff internationally, and there's no need necessarily we need to reinvent the wheel. And so we need to put a bit of flesh on the bones and probably be brave and pick a date, pick a week in 2020, and that's it. We got to deliver. Because otherwise we'll be talking about it this time next year.
It's worth reminding people, I'm of the sort of old generation who will always stop if I see a tourist with a map, and will probably give them totally unnecessary and unwanted information about where they should go and what they should do. But it's worth being reminded that might be a useful thing to do. Tim Fenn.
Yeah, Tim Fenn, Irish Hotels Federation. Just a general question, because there's a certain sense of abject frustration in the industry at the moment around whether or not tourism is at the table, the centre table of government. And we're finding it very difficult to maybe argue the benefits of the industry, particularly in the local areas, right across the economy. And we don't have visibility in the national accounts. They don't see the industry because you can't look at it in their accounts. They don't know how much money they're getting in terms of tax revenues. We have a lot of inferred figures, and what we are now asking for is it's time for this industry to be part of the CSO figures, possibly through a satellite account or whatever. And the question I'm asking here is if we really want to get our industry back on the table, at the cabinet table, and back into where it should be, would you support and now finally getting this over the line?
Oh,
yeah, well, look, we this idea of a tourism satellite account is something that we've been pushing, and we've been kind of increasing our push for that with the CSO. I mean, we in the last number of months we got an agreement in principle from the CSO that they would set up a tourism satellite account, and we're now working through where we're trying to understand from them when and what steps are needed. But we'll be fully supportive and provide whatever kind of information and insight, because we're constantly, I suppose, we're one of the organisations that is constantly pulling data from 15 different sources and trying doing our best to come up with a tourism satellite, our version of the revenue impact and the employment impact, etc. So the more that could be done officially through the CSO, we'd be well up for it and getting that visibility.
I know the University of Limerick and Professor Jim Deegan down there has been very big on this. That if you can't count it, it won't be properly valued, and that's very.
I think the one quick point, though, very quickly, if I can, in terms of there is a lot of positive things that Ireland has relative to its international competitors, like the zero ATD, like the airport passenger duty, in terms of the fact that was reduced, has been a huge help, and has continued to be a huge help in air access growth. I know, obviously, we had the VAT rate for a period of time, and I know we all wanted that retained. We all share the frustration that it hasn't been. But there are a number of other factors when we look internationally, such as the fact that we don't have room tax and bed tax that lots of other places have. So there are a number of areas where the government is pro-tourism, and yes, of course, we'd like to see more being done, but I wouldn't want to underestimate the support that does come in. And likewise, the funding of Tourism Ireland and ourselves, of course, we'd like to see more money coming in, but in comparison to international standards, and when we go and talk to tourism boards in other parts of the world, they say, we'd love to be able to do what you do. I mean, just don't to go up to John McGrillen in Northern Ireland and ask John about the budget he has, and ask John about the VAT rate he has to deal with, the airport passenger duty he has to deal with, just up the road from us. So there's a lot of stuff that the Irish government have done that's worked.
That's true. And I was talking to a French hotelier last year about our 9% VAT rate. Because I was just paying the room tax, at the time, and she was saying, "Oh, if only we could have that here." So there is an envy of it. Yes, somebody else there.
Jim Flannery, Labour Scar Dublin today. Make two suggestions. One is why not celebrate World Tourism Day, which is organised by WTO every year.
What date is
World
it?
It was about a month ago. I'm not sure of the date.
September 27th, somebody says. Yeah.
Second suggestion, why not implement the World WTO satellite accounting system? It's there already, developed by WTO, implemented by most countries in the world, particularly in the Africa and Far East.
Okay, good point. I'm going to go for a last point to you, Eoghan. During the boom, we became too posh for tourism. You found that places in Dublin, which were public places for tourists, i.e. hotels, were being sold off to become private places, apartment blocks or whatever. So that's one of the reasons, in fact, that we had the famine of hotel beds, and you mentioned that. Are we heading that way again with property prices in Dublin starting to go through the roof again?
I hope not. Certainly we. I think it's incumbent on us to learn from the mistakes of the past, and that is that's relatively recent. That what you're talking about there is 10 years ago, so it's still fairly fresh in our minds. And I don't think we are making the mistake we made before. But whether you call it too posh, or whether you call it losing competitiveness, or whether you say that we take things for granted, it's certainly of concern. And I think just to Tim's point, having that sort of government focus on tourism helps.
Yes.
And either there's an argument. Tourism at the moment is in the transport and sport. So aside from the personality of the minister, which we could chat about all afternoon,
it's important to have its own ministry.
Yeah, but is it important enough to have its own ministry, or should at a minimum it be put in with another economics portfolio, so enterprise or business or jobs? There's something along those lines that why should Failte Ireland and Tourism Ireland report into a department that has the likes of CIE and all the other sort of transport agencies, rather than an Enterprise Ireland or an IDA, because it's all about jobs, it's all about economic focus, and that would help keep the attention on the sector and avoid us making mistakes.
Okay, there we leave it for the moment. It's time for your coffee, and we'll be back in 20 minutes to listen to the wonderful Eoghan O'Mara. Thank you.